These are the best Minecraft life hacks that use absolutely zero mods. And you can do all these today if you want, starting with, see, this user found out that by catching a fox and making it invisible, all that's left showing are the bushel of sweet berries in its mouth. And for that matter, I'm sure you could use this to lead around just about any of the other items that a fox can carry in its mouth. But regardless of what you use, you'll want to keep this pet away from your chicken coop, or else. Instead of moving your stuff with hoppers, we're using conveyor belts instead, since with a system of pistons and honey blocks, you can move uncollected items on the floor from one place to another, just as a modded conveyor belt would. And if you want to get really creative, throw on some raw fish and have a brand new sushi bar to impress your friends. Most minecarts can sit just one. This can fit up to two. And pulling this off is super easy. All we need to do is use a boat and place it into a minecart to create a fully functional two-seater cart, which is possible because our boat is recognized as an entity, which allows it to get inside of the minecart, but then since it still functions as a boat, any other mob or friend can hop into the back seat with you, making that roller coaster ride a lot less lonely. Did you know that you could do this with bubble streams? Because apparently if you throw eggs directly at the water, those projectiles will ricochet and bounce along the bubbles. And functionally, this is a lot like an ender pearl stasis chamber, but we're just using a lot more momentum when we throw it out. Which means if you make a couple of baskets, you might be able to set this up for your very own basketball game. And hey, since it works with other entities, with the right amount of force, this could be the wild addition for your next TNT cannon. Throughout history, Minecraft has had its fair share of cannons. Whether you're caving holes with a TNT launcher, or creating a nuisance with a sand cannon, there are plenty of different ways to launch projectiles in the game. And as it turns out, the 1.17 update offers up an even newer addition to that category. As I'm sure you know, these dripstone blocks are not to be messed with. But better still is that we're able to launch these using slime blocks and pistons. Even with a small one like this, the momentum that we add in here could be just enough to make the option lethal. So while everyone else is worried about the differences between stalactites and stalagmites, you'll know that their best application truly is as bullets. Did you know we can get 30 enchantments on one item? Because as you'll see, we can use this strategy from Nembon to never see the phrase too expensive ever again. See, every time that you enchant an item, it's counted as 2 in the anvil, the item and the enchanted book that you used. So as long as the amount of enchantments on the books that we have matches with the amount on the item, we can work our way up to 30 enchantments at a time. That is, if only there were 30 enchantments in the game. While playing version 1.8.9, if you were to look at an anvil sideways like this, then because of a glitch, that actually changes all other anvils in the world's collision boxes. So if we look at this sideways anvil and then walk backwards into a wall of anvils, we'll phase through as if there was no collision box whatsoever. And while I love how goofy this trick is to pull off, I also like imagining how goofy it must have been to discover this. And I would have loved to imagine how surprised someone was when they built a weird wall of anvils, only for it to get even weirder. Here's why you need to start bringing moss down into the mines. See, when placed next to stone and then given bone meal, the moss replaces all the surrounding blocks except for any precious ores such as diamond and iron. And that'll mean no more wasting your fortune pickaxe on the branch mining chores, since instead, the hoe can clean up just fine. And really, I'd much rather waste a stone hoe than my diamond pickaxe trying to find these things. And if we're spending less to make more, then I'm all in. Minecraft doesn't have guns, and thankfully so, might I add. But with this contraption, you can sure make it look like it does. After making an empty square in the base of the blocks, all we need to do is trap a zombie or husk in a minecart, name a dinner bone, and they'll be stuck with their legs in the air. Which, if we use pistons to push blocks to top it all off, we'll have earned ourselves a self-seeking turret design. And hey, if you were to use an Enderman, those long legs that it has would be sure to look like some kind of anti-aircraft defense system, and that should be plenty intimidating to any visitors. Now let me set up the problem for you. You've got a farm where you gotta push mobs into the nether portal. However, as soon as they're there, you can't use something like water to actually get them out of the way, so you're kinda stuck. That is, unless you put any mob inside of a boat in that nether portal. You see, this system utilizes the different boat and mob collisions to do so, and it'll actually push them when you come through the portal, making this a pretty useful thing for when you're trying to move mobs around or using it as a part of your farms. Using this design, it's simple, it's automatic, and most importantly, it's weird, which honestly, I'm fine with all three of those. Villagers in Minecraft are not a very aggressive bunch, which can make them very fragile to different attacks from mobs. However, using dispensers like so, we can actually give enchanted armor to villagers, and they'll use it, which means that even though you don't see it, this villager's actually fully equipped with enchanted netherite armor using thorns. But really, where you're gonna get the best results from this feature is by mixing your villagers together with Frostwalker. And better yet, it's gonna mean that the next time the pillagers come through for a raid, they're not gonna know what hit them. Minecraft staircases should be straightforward, but as we've shown in the past, there are plenty of weird staircases that we can put to use in our worlds, and this is no different. What might look like a random mix of blocks and foodstuffs is actually the fastest walkable staircase in the game. The truth is that the way that these hitboxes are laid out, it's just so that we can stand in the middle and climb these staircases seamlessly. And Sure, a proper spiral staircase would look much nicer, but if you want the speed as you climb up to your mountain, this is hard to beat. Now, this wolf's tail is spinning, but why? Well, to answer that, we first need to know that a tamed wolf's tail is linked to its health. So the lower its health, the lower the tail. And conversely, if we use commands to make it have a higher health, yeah, the tail starts spinning. So if you were to use the effect commands to give the dog both health boost and regeneration, we could watch its tail spin in real time. Just don't get dizzy when you try to watch it. Placing blocks on slabs sounds like a pipe dream. So why does this work? Well, if you use the summon command to get yourself a falling block, you can make sure it lands right where you want it to be. And then after typing the command to summon it into place, you'll have a permanent addition to your slab or stair shelf, which beats the alternative of it floating, just saying. In Bedrock Edition, it's possible to jump 6 blocks high without using any potion effects. Simply have your friend hold up a shield and then punch them repeatedly. Because if you have a wall behind you for support, you can use that knockback to launch yourself right up to the ceiling. And if you both have a shield on hand, you could each switch back and forth and use this to effectively climb up to build limit. Just make sure you don't punch them when their shield's down, or this whole thing could fall apart, literally. Now, you can't use channeling unless you hit a mob, but these item frames count as a mob, so with one of these, we can place it down and have our own pocket solution for fixing our oxidized copper, which allows us to turn back time, in a way. And hey, it can also provide a solution for converting mobs with lightning without having to hit them with a lightning strike, and that way your brown mushroom doesn't just die on the spot. The idea here is pretty simple. We're using dead coral fans and slime blocks to duplicate our carpet, much in the same way that we've used it to duplicate TNT in the past. And then when you automate this system with a redstone clock, we can have that machine go back and forth and give us a whole bunch of carpet to flow into your furnaces. I hope you like the smell of burnt wool. We can see in, and the criminals can't see out. Let me explain. Without using any mods, all we need are some tinted glass blocks to help us get the effect. And if you place a wall of tinted glass on a build like so, all we need to do is make sure that one side has enough light and the other one is completely dark. That way, when you stand on one side of the glass, you're only going to see that darkness, while on the other, you can see perfectly through as planned. Horses are a lot of fun to ride around, but as soon as you take one to a body of water, you know you're out of luck. I mean, if you're ankle deep, you're fine, but that's the most you're gonna get. Unless, of course, you manage to luck out during a thunderstorm, because then you can get a skeleton horse. And folks, with one of these skeletal steeds and the right amount of potions, you can actually travel underwater riding a skeleton horse. It's a weird form of travel, and I definitely don't see it happening much, but really, how cool does it look to just go down in the depths of one of these things? If nothing else, just take a screenshot of yourself and put it on a metal album. For any fans of The Shining, I'm sure you're well aware of the Here's Johnny Easter egg in Minecraft. That is, if you name a Vindicator Johnny, then it's going to go absolutely insane against all the other mobs around it. And while this is a fun little reference, we can actually use it for way more than that. You see, by putting this Vindicator's aggression into a mob farm, we can actually have it auto-kill the different mobs that we breed. This does make for a pretty brutal system, but the results are hard to argue with. And as long as you yourself manage to keep a respectable distance between Johnny, he's gonna go right to his work and leave you be. This user found a way to create a dropper that you'll always survive. See, by using pistons, tripwires, and a whole lot of redstone, we can create a readily available landing pad to catch us when we fall. And as you can see, each tripwire tells the machine where you're at, meaning it'll move to your exact location so you safely fall in the water, which makes for the most complex water bucket save that I've ever seen. I want to show you all my new secret base, and if you can't see it, that's kind of the point. But as soon as we fly down, you'll be able to see that powdered snow can work perfect for secret aerial entrances, since we can fly through powdered snow without losing our speed on the elytra. But as you'll notice from this example, the light can still shine through the powdered snow, so make sure not to do this at night. Or if you do, at least light up the rest of the mountain so that it's not as obvious. Now, how is this lamp powered? Well, the answer is redstone, but probably not how you'd expect it. See, this user discovered that by placing down item frames and design maps like so, they could hide the redstone underneath. So if you have a cobblestone block below, you can cap it off with its own design, or maybe even diamonds to show off. And hey, it'll even work for hiding minecart rails like so, letting us make a secret roller coaster to get around. One of the key parts of speedrunning is a quick ender dragon fight. I mean, how are you gonna reach the top of the leaderboard if you can't one-cycle this foe? But while most of us think that beds are the fastest way to beat the baddie, there's actually a much stranger option. Leave it to the crazy minds of the Minecraft technical community to make up this monstrosity, the TNT arrow launcher, more affectionately referred to as the rail cannon. Being able to deal roughly 1200 points of damage in a single blow, this machine can one-hit the ender dragon. And in fact, the only hope that anyone has of surviving this thing is a totem of undying. But if you can't cheat death, then this will take you to a swift one. Normally, you can't smelt nether stem blocks or planks, but with some crafting, we can break that rule. By converting nether stem blocks into planks, then the planks into sticks, and then finally our sticks into ladders, we can use them in our furnace for fuel. And while I don't know why you'd use this over the literal lakes of lava that you have available, if you're in the nether without a bucket, it is an option. Minecarts and water don't mix, or at least that was the case prior to the 1.17 update. But since then, the Caves and Cliffs update has allowed us to do a lot more in Java to mix these minecarts and rivers like so, which is cool to have parity with Bedrock, but that version still has one major plus. See, the minecarts over here don't lose momentum while entering bubble streams, meaning if we line a nearby lake with soul sand like such, we can bounce our cart right across to the other side. It's definitely a ridiculous way to travel, but who knows, it might be worth adding into your next Splash Mountain remake. I think every kid's wanted to be a spy at some point. I mean, why else would there be so many different spy items available at book fairs? It's supply and demand, folks. So while I'm not saying you'll become a full James Bond in Minecraft, this might at least put you one step closer. Secret messages are a classic bit of spy technology, but even when you use the message command, that isn't always secure. So if that's the case, let's turn to invisible ink, otherwise known as nether hyphae. Now, laid out on the ground, these don't look like much, but give your friend a map, and now it's a hidden message. No matter where you go in the world, you've got yourself a private messaging app, and better yet, the server mods will be none the wiser. Opening a chest next to piglins is a dangerous gamble, and breaking it doesn't work either. So instead, place a hopper underneath the chest and then wait for all the items to pour out. See, the piglins don't care if you open the hopper, so you can enjoy all of the riches that they drip feed out of the chest. And then, after that chest is empty, why not trade all of the gold that you found inside back to the piglins? That way, they get to keep their gold, and we get to stay on their good side. Now, nether portals are a necessity, but I could do without the zombified piglins spawning in them. So if you're like me and you're also sick of those unwanted visitors, then with just a turtle-egg placed like so, we can bait them away from the portal. So sure, it doesn't stop them from spawning, but I'd rather treat the problem than learn how to live with it. And as long as the turtle egg isn't placed on a beach to grow up, it's not gonna hatch, and the baby turtle won't object to it either. Water elevators have become a staple in Minecraft builds. After all, it's quite handy to have a seamless elevator to go from point A to point B, but they don't always fit in with the aesthetic. So to solve that issue, what if we didn't have to see the elevator while using it? As strange as that sounds, it's actually possible. By using honey blocks like so, their hitbox is just small enough to let us ride the water elevator, but not actually enter the bubble stream. So if we put something like item frames and map art on the outside, we get an invisible elevator, all without sacrificing our build's look. In Minecraft, it's often easy to accumulate your fair share of junk, and while throwing that stuff into a fire is a fun pastime, what if you really want to get rid of something? Like say through some chance you came across a particularly cheaty piece of netherite. Well, if you don't have a cactus on hand, then there is one option that we tend to neglect. Items are entities, just like you and me, and that means that these things have a kill switch. So if you take an anvil sky high and drop it on a thing of items, it'll delete the stuff from existence. It's almost like we're creating our own kind of item execution system. But if you really want to get rid of your friend's diamonds, then this will do the trick and then some. Water breathing potions definitely are helpful, but they're also expensive. So one of the favorite ways to do this, if you're on Java, is just grabbing yourself a door, and now all of a sudden, you not only can breathe in here, but we can also mine at the original speed that we want to. You're going to be able to see everywhere around you. It just makes it so much easier. If you could just bring doors, you get 3 of them when you craft, there's really no reason not to have these. If you've ever tried to get a skeleton to hit a creeper, then you know it's not an easy task, but it's a necessary one if we want to fill out our music disc collection, so we'll have to get creative. And luckily, this user has the right idea. See, Minecraft counts assists the same way that it does kills, meaning if we have a skeleton shoot a piece of TNT, ignite it, and then that kills the creeper, we'll get the music disc the same way. Simple as that. If you've ever cared for a plant, then you know that these suckers need a ton of light, but apparently we can use that to our advantage. We can actually use this for a system that can automatically harvest crops when the lights go off. You see, the way that this works is that the game requires a certain amount of light level for the crops to be planted. So if we just switch off the redstone lamp, bam, everything is harvested in an instant. And then, since farmland isn't a full block, we can just have a set of hoppers underneath and collect the stuff just like that. Sure, this does share a lot of similarities to water-based systems, and while it might not be a full replacement, you have to admit, it looks pretty cool in action. What we've got here is the tunnel bore. So, what we're able to do, and really what makes this all happen, we're doing TNT duplication for sure, but it's all thanks to the ancient debris being able to be a pushable block that doesn't explode. So, that shoots it forward, and kablowie! It's 100% collection rate too, with the TNT. So then you go forward, you get yourself diamonds and stuff, pretty neat. It is kind of weird seeing an observer in the world next to you. Like, are you comfortable with this? why are these armor stands fighting? Well, when you have these statues roll over a detector rail, we can animate them like so, which means that we can use our very own armor stands to recreate something of a sword fight. And then if you have the rails aligned in a row like so, we can throw them into minecarts and have the show commence, which if you ask me could really help to liven up your next Coliseum build. This sapling will never grow up, no matter how much you bone meal it, and the reason is that we have a little piece of string blocking it from growing. And hey, this can even work with vines, glow lichen, bamboo, and sugarcane as well. So if you're tired of watching your vines get overgrown on your wall, this could lead you to design your Ivy League in whichever way you'd like. Or do this on your friend's sugarcane farm and laugh when they don't get any profits. Nether portals are a dream for travel. Surely, being able to teleport anywhere in the world makes transportation a breeze. But going into the Nether isn't always a fun trip. So what if we can make portals strictly in the overworld? Well, thanks to Ender Pearl stasis systems, that is, in some way, possible. After throwing an Ender Pearl into place at the different locations, all we need is chunk loaders and redstone to connect your overworld portal network. Really, if you've got the time to lay out the redstone, the possibilities with this can be pretty impressive. And once that's figured out, it definitely makes for a snazzy way to get around your base. It's possible to get all of the illegal items that you'd only ever see in creative admin commands entirely in your survival world. The way we do this is actually through an April Fool's update. Since back in the one block at a time snapshot that Mojang did for April Fools, the Enderman could spawn whole new illegal items. And while most of us would have just tried out that snapshot in a world that wasn't important, you are able to update that world like any other snapshot, meaning that you can then have this Enderman that's holding a structure block. Kill it, get it to drop its item, and now you've got something that you shouldn't even be able to have in the base game. And honestly, it's probably something that most players who are visiting your world wouldn't even recognize. That's how rare it is. But it also means you need to play this terrible snapshot, so I guess you did have to work for it in the end. Horses aren't that popular for travel, which is fair because they're quickly outclassed late game, but they might still have one thing going for them. See, in the Bedrock version, we're able to place blocks under us in a speed bridge like so. But what's better still is that this even works on horseback, meaning with the right speed, we can even speed bridge on a horse, which is wild to see. And even if it isn't as practical as an Elytra boost, I've got to admit that this is a lot of fun to mess around with. So if you're looking to bring your items across the gorge, maybe just grab a pack mule and do the trek like so. Anyone who's ever messed around with the technical side of Minecraft is well and familiar with the concept of a mob switch. That is, you get a bunch of withers in a cage, make sure they don't despawn, and no new hostile mobs are going to be giving you trouble. It's a great system, but it's definitely costly. So a simpler and safer option to do is instead having a zombie villager mob switch. You see, if you trade with a villager and then zombify it, this will make them both unable to despawn and also count towards the mob cap. This is actually a great way to put zombie villagers to use and in turn actually keep all other villages safe. Few things in Minecraft are truly unbreakable. I mean, even Bedrock can be broken in some form, and that's the unbreakable block. But while we might stand a chance of breaking blocks when we stand on steady ground, it's a different story when they're on the move. Through the help of flying machines, it's possible to make a proper working flying cage trap to take your enemies right up to build limit. But what we really should mention here is that by using blocks such as honeycomb that can't be easily mined, they'll be in for a bad time. As you can see, as the blocks keep moving, the break time keeps resetting. So if your foe doesn't have the proper kit to break it down, they'll be stuck on the one-way journey with no hope in sight. At some point, I think we've all wanted to be an astronaut, but without $1 billion in the bank, that's a pipe dream for most of us. So that leaves us two options. We can either sit around and mope, or start to work in Minecraft science. As it is, we don't have much in the way of rocket fuel, but what we do have is TNT, and a lot of it, which means if we grab a whole bunch of TNT minecarts, we can pack enough of these suckers into a small space to launch us right towards the moon. Though maybe pack some blast protection and totems of undying to do this. Otherwise, both of you and your dreams would go up in smoke. Pigs in saddles are somewhat of a laughing stock when it comes to transportation, but what they lack on the ground, they more than make up for in the skies. It turns out that with the right technique, we can tie a lead between an elytra and a saddled pig and essentially create a two-person rideshare. Is it practical? I've got no clue, but clearly it's a sight to see. So if you've got both the leads and pigs to spare, it's well worth your time to try this out on the server. And if you start from the right height, you might just clear some serious distance with your friend in tow, which I think is just fantastic. If you want to be a pro at Minecraft, then you gotta be able to MLG clutch. But if your reaction time's like mine, then that's disconcerting. It's just not gonna happen. So a simpler option for us slowpokes is to use chorus fruit instead. Strangely enough, the random teleport feature is actually predictable, or at least predictable enough for us to use. The way it works, it will always teleport you to solid ground. So if you're in midair off of Shulker's levitation effect, then you can just chomp on one of these and be teleported right back to safety. And look, I'm not gonna lie, it maybe doesn't look as cool as a water bucket save, but being able to survive a deadly fall, I think that's good enough for me. Carpet mob proofing. Now, good advice. By using carpets on top of signs like so, we all know that we can walk over these, but our mobs can't. They're just stuck. So the husk won't run over to our villager, but the villager also can't escape either. And as soon as I get rid of this and make it a full block, then they can escape just fine. Unfortunately, he doesn't know that was a bad idea. Now, the way that this works is that we have an iron golem killing mechanism that uses a small spawning platform and a campfire so that the golem can't move away from the campfire and it'll constantly get hit. And thanks to its small size and low cost, it could be made really early into your world. So while it's not as efficient as something like this designed by Tango Tech, much like using a campfire versus a blast furnace, it is a great thing to have when you're starting out. Elytras are a great form of Minecraft travel, but that's not news to anybody. Though without the proper fireworks, this great invention becomes a failure to launch. But it turns out that all we need is some claustrophobia, and we can shoot off right to the skies. See, Minecraft has something called entity cramming, which happens when enough mobs are packed into a single space. And while there is a limit to this, if we use just one mob less than that in a 1x1 space, we can get some serious propulsion. Apparently, all the little nudges from the various mobs adds up to be a bunch of speed for our Elytra takeoff, giving us the tight squeeze needed to reach the horizon. Oceans are a common obstacle in Minecraft travel, but luckily, boats offer up an easy solution for that. However, these simple ships could really use an upgrade. So if you're looking to become a proper captain on the 7 seas, maybe use your boat's second seat for a boost. Like, maybe bringing along a witch to offer up some extra artillery support, because luckily for us, their potions throw in such an arc that you'll never get hit. Or maybe you're trying to move house, in which case a llama brings along some extra storage slots for your belongings. And really, whichever you choose, I'm sure it'll be better than just having some lonely trip across the deep blue. If you've only got yourself one bucket of water, but you still need an infinite water source, just wait for nighttime, since if you kill a skeleton and get some bone meal, then you can use that to create seagrass, which if you grow seagrass inside of flowing water, it'll turn that into a full water source block. So whether you're playing in a desert on a skyblock island, or you just don't want to craft another bucket, a bit of bone meal will solve your problem just the same. Villagers are stupid, and you probably know that by trying to get their AI to move anywhere that you want them to. But there's no greater showcase of that than this example from Green's Hermitcraft world. Since if you trade with a cured librarian to get glass blocks, then we can craft those into glass panes and then sell them to a cartographer villager for profit. And if you're wondering just how crazy this can get, Green literally traded up from 2 pumpkins to a full emerald beacon, which I think is more than enough as a proof of concept. This composter doesn't look like much, but it's actually my base. Don't believe me? Here, I'll show you. If we just step inside and throw an item right into place, a hidden hopper minecart will trigger and cause this redstone machine to push us right into place. And bam, hidden entrance. And while it's hard to notice what's happening from above, this Reddit user's post makes the mechanics a lot more obvious. Just make sure you place this in a village where it makes sense for there to be a composter. Otherwise, this hidden base could just stick out like a sore thumb. Now see, decorated pots allow us to make a cheaper version of hoppers. Now normally you would use hoppers just to connect every part of this chain, but instead, for 4 bricks, you get yourself decorated pots. Also a very satisfying sound. The only issue is that someone's now able to break your redstone machine with a bow. Anyone who's ever tried to build something organic knows that it's very tough to get builds to look natural, or as natural as they could look in a game made out of blocks, I guess. But for a thought experiment, say that you want to build an island in a creative world. How do you go about it? Well, if you're like me, then you're looking for the easy way out. And in that case, I'd like to delegate this job to our good friends Grass and Mycelium. Set up both of these on a plain dirt canvas, and essentially you can watch a Splatoon turf war take place in real time. And then, after the battle is done, just replace the mycelium with water, and like that, you've got a fully formed island. Or, at the very least, a very solid foundation that you can build off of. As we know, armor stands are entities, not blocks, which means there's a lot of opportunity that comes from overlapping multiple blocks in armor stand hitboxes. And with the Caves and Cliffs update, that came in the form of the telescope. After aligning the legs of the armor stands just right, we can fashion ourselves a base to then lay out our copper lightning rods. And while I wouldn't recommend looking through this on a stormy day, this might be a neat detail to add to your next observatory. Or as some have pointed out, you could easily play this off as a piece of weaponry just as well. In which case, I think it's a must-have for your next battle reenactment. Normally, when you want AFK at a mob farm, you gotta use an auto killer. And while those are great, they don't get you any XP. Except, of course, if we throw man's best friend in the mix. Sure enough, by putting a dog right down here at the bottom of the farm, we're able to have it kill all these skeletons for you to get loads and loads of EXP. One great use I've seen of this is putting an AFK skeleton EXP farm right next to your tree farm, which overall makes this a really solid design to use in your world. Just make sure no protection or thorn skeletons happen to get in the mix, because if that that happens, you might have to feed the dog. It'll take a couple hits. Although snow golems try their best, they don't exactly make for the best defense. I mean, unless they're fighting a blaze, these fellas don't even do damage, just knockback. And that's not exactly cutting it for our purposes. So, to make these frosty friends a bit more ferocious, we need to crank up the heat. And for that, I'm actually being serious. In Bedrock Edition, if you put fire in front of their projectiles, then we straight up mix the fire and the ice, get something they gotta fear. And from there, all you gotta worry about is keeping the things safe. But as long as you use something like honey blocks to keep baby zombies from jumping in, then these should keep your villagers safe and secure, all while breaking the laws of physics as well. Let's face it, minecarts aren't very fast, which is a shame because roller coasters are a ton of fun. So instead of a normal railway, place your rails like this for an extra speed buff. Now, it might look silly, and the travel animation's definitely unique to say the least, but the speed boost that we can achieve more than makes up for it. You don't even need powered rails to do it. And honestly, the slowest part of the process might just be figuring out how to build all those weird circles, but trust me, it'll pay off. If you've played on enough Minecraft servers, then you're definitely aware that some people can be griefers. So if you want to give those annoying players more of a run for their money, you can actually trap an Elder Guardian, and boom, you got your own form of anti-grief. Look, it's not perfect. If they have a milk bucket, they're going to be able to get past it, but if they're not prepared, they're going to have a hard time busting into your base. And hopefully that frustration that they feel will be enough to get them off of your lawn anyway. Especially if you trap the thing in obsidian so they're not able to break through. This makes for a pretty solid way to both annoy and hopefully ward off any greedy players. I'm sure we've all wanted X-ray vision at some point, and while some players get it through questionable methods, there are some interesting ways to do this in the base game, and this option using armor stands definitely fits that bill. See, when an armor stand holds a glass block, the transparency is rendered in a weird way, meaning that certain things don't show up when we see through the glass, and that allows us to see through oceans, or even paintings on a wall. So while it's not a perfect replacement for the Ocarina of Time Lens of Truth, I will say that if you're in the Bedrock Edition, this could make for a fun puzzle to add into your maps. Getting an Elytra is a great thing, but getting to the end cities, not so much. And unfortunately for us, it's always tougher to get an Elytra when you don't already have an Elytra. So to save yourself the headache of building across the end void gaps, why don't we get a bit more technical instead? See, with the help of a flying machine, we can build a vessel perfect for the journey to the Outer Islands. Now, granted, stopping or turning the ship might be a bit of a problem, but with the proper planning, this could save you from placing thousands of blocks while searching. And if you ask me, I'd much rather take this passive option compared to that. As any game designer knows, it isn't always easy to get the players to follow the correct path, and more often than not, when someone gets lost, they also get frustrated, and that's the last thing we want. So to help guide our players along the straight and narrow, why not illuminate the path like so? By chucking an armor stand with a helmet into a minecart, we can clip the top of its noggin outside to give an animated motion to our road. And while it's weird, I do think it gives a solid opportunity to guide people along, especially when the route has a few twists and turns. So if you're tired of standard signs, this animation might be the best bet. One of the staples of Minecraft exploration is setting up camp wherever and whenever you need, which is nice, but something tells me placing your bed on the floor isn't nearly as pretty as this. Though unfortunately, setting up a tent in Minecraft can be just as confusing as it is in real life. Though once you take the time to lay out the armor stands at correct rotations and add in your banners, tripwire hooks, and chains, the results are clear to see. With an observer underneath the block of your choice, we can make any seemingly safe block into a death trap, and then cover it up and watch from a safe distance as your unsuspecting friend interacts with a live explosive. Just don't leave them too traumatized, because they might just end up returning the favor. If you're having trouble finding the dead coral for a TNT duplication machine, don't sweat it, just use glass. No joke, even though it's a less popular way of performing this glitch, all it takes is a setup like so using observers to make an equally effective TNT duplication machine. And you might find this could be even more effective on a skyblock world, where coral isn't exactly close by. And in any case, it's just nice to be able to build one of these without having to need Silk Touch right away. This item does not exist in Minecraft. So, how is it here in vanilla? Well, by utilizing invisible item frames and a transparent map art, you can decorate your house and get an amazing effect. Though, to get that transparent map art, you are going to need to head out to the void and make your pixel art there, since that's the only way that we're going to be able to get no background on the PNG. And that'll allow us to make anything from plates on the dinner table, or even signs to scare off our enemies. If you think about it, composters would make for great barrels. At least they would if we could fill them with something other than the pods of texture. But luckily, with armor stands, we don't have to give up on that wooden barrel dream. Rather, if we chuck one of these statues inside the hitbox and throw a block on its head, we can make a custom barrel filled with our choice. And I think that's better than this trapdoor option in one key way. We can have varying heights to liquid, which basically lets us create our own cauldrons. So whether it's honey, slime, or any other block that you choose, I think this is a cool opportunity to try. This one is about bombing ocean monuments. Now, as weird as it might feel, you can actually use certain blocks to drop into the TNT and make it possible to explode underwater. The TNT thinks it's inside the sand block, which would technically be air. There you go. We can blast ourselves a hole through and get all the blocks, even when we have the mining fatigue. So if you go and blow up the 3 specific spots where the Elder Guardians are in the ocean monument, then you can go easily have a way to swim in, kill off the Elder Guardians, and then from there it's just mining. Definitely one of the most useful ones. Waterfalls used to look like this, but now they look like this. And the reason for that makeover is the particle effects command. See, this user was creative enough to use a command block to create exploding particles to resemble crashing water. And while the gray in the clouds might not be as convincing up close, for vanilla alternative to Dr. Rat's mod, I'd say this is worth paying attention to if you make creative maps. With the help of this machine, I'll never run out of items in my offhand. And the reason for this has something to do with a concept called item shadowing, which, to grossly oversimplify, because I don't even frankly understand it all, the way that this works is that we're using some amount of update suppression with all these rails, and then trick the game to think that this item slot in this chest corresponds with the item slot that we're holding. And just like this, we'll never run out of rockets when we're exploring our world. At least that's how Doc M used it on Hermitcraft, and I feel like that's a pretty practical application. But considering that update suppression's been patched out in the past, I think it's pretty obvious that Mojang's stance on this is that it's cheating, so more of a use it before you lose it kind of thing. When it comes to building, custom trees are all the rage, and Gemini will surely tell you that. But while that's true, the flip side is that these full-size blocks are only really good for making full-size trees. And if you try to make a smaller sapling, the result just seems off. So for that case, let's change out our logs for sticks and use this option instead. If we cross together multiple armor stands and pose their arms in a certain way, we can then add in leaves to get something of a smaller tree. When you're making a big build, sometimes the littlest details can go a long way. And for that, I think particle effects definitely fit the bill. And while there are plenty of existing ones to put on display with command blocks, that doesn't stop us from making our own. For example, take this vat of acid. By itself, it looks pretty bland, more like a green pool than anything else. But add some invisible armor stands into position with slime blocks on their head, and now we've got a bubbling mixture fit for a radiation warning. Or hey, do what these folks did and add some custom leaves falling off your cherry tree, all of which is a nice touch for sure. What we've got here is a wither cage. We're already starting off section 1 with danger, but as you see here, we've got ourselves something that'll automatically break blocks that we put up for. So we're using literal targets and it'll destroy it. So by having a wither with enough water on top of it and keeping it in place, you can redirect its projectiles towards Observer and he tanks them like no issue. The Chad Observer versus the absolutely quaking wither. By having this here, it draws the wither's aggression towards this cod and it shoots off in the direction that we want it to. What a weirdly precise thing that they have to calculate there. That our condition's broken. I mean, that's not news to anyone who's ever played it, and we've definitely showcased that on this channel. But I think this particular glitch using bone meal can very easily show how some of the oversights are. Now, if you start off in a plains biome and bone meal the ground, you get grass and flowers. That much is expected. But then, when you bone meal some of that grass into tall grass, it doesn't always take the bone meal out of your inventory. And then, with a pair of shears, we can take that new tall grass and turn it into more bone meal in a composter, essentially giving us infinite bone meal, if you also have infinite time to get it. And if you were playing on something like Skyblock, this could be particularly useful. A gas turret certainly has a nice ring to it, and as you can see from this user's design, it's a lot of fun too. Now, in order to create this homemade design, you're going to need to bring a ghast into the overworld. Then, after you trap that new ghast, we can flip a lever to move a piece of its trap wall up and down like so, and that'll let us choose how and when the ghast shoots a fireball. From there, we just need a mash click to punch it in the right direction, and we'll have ourselves an open invitation to wreak havoc on your friends. Here's how to turn your Allays into a deadly weapon, since even though they can't equip it, if you give them a piece of Thorn's armor to hold onto, then any mobs that try to attack them will also take damage from that. And as you can see in this example from Razeworks, if you tie your Allay to a lead and then have a mob attack you, you might just have yourself the deadliest balloon in Minecraft. But if you do want to try this out, I have to give one warning, which is that even though the Allays tend to regenerate a lot of health, there are still a few mobs that can kill them off. So to keep them safe and on your side, you might want to have a couple of Allays doing this, that way the damage is getting evenly dispersed amongst the crowd. You ever wanted a pet dragon, Observer? But with this, there actually is ways to connect the Ender Dragon over to the overworld, and using a very specific setup that will show on screen, you can get it teleported over here, and it doesn't do much in the overworld. It's definitely destructive. I wouldn't recommend letting it next to the other animals. We have an overworld Ender Dragon. An over dragon? With a pillar of scaffolding like so and an observer up top, we can effectively use this to send redstone signals upward like so. All we have to do is have a trapdoor underneath the top of the scaffolding, and that way when the legs on the bottom one update, that signal will move across the top of the system until eventually it's detected by an observer and we get the redstone signal up there. Though I will mention that unlike using walls for this, the higher the scaffolding, the longer the input delay. But for the simplicity and compactness of this design, I think it makes up for this trade-off and then some. If you were to fall on this carpet, you wouldn't take any fall damage, but this one over here would break your legs just the same. So, what's the difference? Well, by using powdered snow, you can fall from a great height and take no damage when you land. And that even happens when you have a carpet on top, meaning we can make whatever kind of pixel art design we want, and feel free to look at it while we're falling down. After all, it's not gonna hurt when we land. If you have only 3 dirt blocks, you're rich, or at least richer than you might think. Since if you have 3 dirt blocks, it's actually possible to trade that up to an emerald. Now, the way that we do this in 1.19 is that we turn our dirt into mud using a water bottle, and then dry it out on a dripstone rack like such to get ourselves our very own clay blocks, which if we then break, we can trade with a stonemason to get ourselves an emerald. It's not exactly the fastest trade, but it's definitely possible. And this proves that even when you're dirt poor, you're still not as poor as you think you are. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?